Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Greg Gilligan. I'm the Vice President of Operations for RVA757 Connects. Thank you so much for joining us for this latest edition of the RVA757 Connects Innovation Spotlight webinar series. Today, we have a very important and interesting program about Virginia's plan to end the digital divide and also the importance of reliable internet and how high-speed internet changes the lives of so many people in our community. More on that in just a moment. But first, just a couple of housekeeping matters. I'll introduce our sponsor this month, which is South State Bank. Then I'll give a quick update on things that are going on at RVA 757 Connects. And then we'll delve into today's topic, and then we'll leave enough time at the end for Q&As from you, the audience. Also, just as a reminder, we do record our webinars, and if you'll be able to access those webinar recordings on our website later this afternoon. And also, if you have any questions to ask to Dr. Holmes today, please send them through the chat function to me, and we'll be able to get those questions to her. So RVA 757 Connects, as you know, is a nonprofit organization. So we rely on donations. And one of our corporate investors is South State Bank. And here to tell us more about South State Bank is Bobby Cowgall, who has been president of South State Bank's Virginia operations in 2012. He joined the bank in 2014 and has held a variety of positions and responsibility within the bank, including serving as the Richmond market president. Before joining South State Bank, he served as senior level positions for Park Sterling Bank, Cellular One Bank, and Regions Bank. Bobby serves on the board of RVA 757 Connects. He is currently the chairman of the board of directors of the United Way of Greater Richmond and Petersburg. He serves on a variety of other boards, including Chamber RVA and Sportable Adaptive Sports. So here to tell us more about South State Bank, Bobby, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Greg, and good afternoon, everyone. I will try to be brief today before we turn it back over to the main event. As Greg mentioned, my name is Bobby Cowgall. I do have the privilege of serving on the board of RVA 757 Connects, and during my day job, I have the responsibility for leading and building the Virginia market for the bank. I'm calling in today from my office in the James Center in downtown Richmond. Hopefully those of you on the call from Richmond are familiar with South State Bank. And I expect many of you from Hampton Roads are less familiar, but hopefully you'll see in a moment that that'll begin to change. So today I just wanted to cover three quick things. Number one, provide a brief overview of the bank. Number two, talk about our presence in Virginia in particular. And number three, quickly touch on our capabilities. So Greg, if you'll turn it to the next slide, please. Our community banking roots go back many years, but today South State ranks as one of the top 40 banks in the United States when measured by assets. And you can see on the screen here some of our sort of data points about our scale. We have $33 billion loan portfolio, $37 billion on deposit. We're traded on the New York Stock Exchange and have a market cap of about $7 billion. You can also see some of the nice recognition we've received the last few years. Greg, if you'll turn it to the next slide. I always like to put this slide up to give a little perspective about our footprint. Today we operate in these 6 southeastern states that you see on the screen. Virginia is our northernmost point. We operate in the Carolinas, Florida, Georgia, and Alabama. And recently announced a pending acquisition of a bank in Texas. So we'll be adding Texas to our footprint as well. Now, if you zoom into Virginia, Greg, if you can forward the slide, you'll see that we have our critical mass today is in Richmond. We've been operating as South State Bank in Richmond for about 8 years now. But beyond Richmond, we really have an opportunity to fill in the map here in Virginia. And we have identified Virginia as an expansion market for the bank. And I think you'll notice on the screen that we have added our first quote unquote dot on the map in Hampton Roads with our first loan production office, which we opened about a year ago. Just last week, we've opened officially and a new office space in the Virginia Beach oceanfront. And our reception in Hampton Roads over the last year has been really great thus far. So we're really excited about that. Hopefully you can see when you look at this map where our growth is occurring. You can see why we've decided to support RVA757 Connects. All of the reasons that we're marketing the mega region collectively are the reasons we see such great opportunity ahead of us at South State in the mega region. With over 3 million people and a lot of really great communities, we're bullish on what's happening and look forward to doing business more and more here in the mega region. Lastly, and Greg, if you'll forward the last slide, I just want to put up on the screen a few of our capabilities, all of which we are delivering here in Virginia through our local experienced bankers, both in Richmond and now in Hampton Roads. And so before I turn it back over to Greg, I just want to thank you all for supporting this important organization. And as we look to build the mega region, please don't hesitate to reach out to me if you have any thoughts or questions on how South State can help. Greg, back to you. Thanks.
Bobby, thank you so much for that information about South State Bank and your growth plans for the mega region. And thank you for your service on our board of directors and for South State Bank's financial support. This gives me an opportunity to thank all of our corporate and individual sponsors and supporters of RVA757 Connects as well. So this is a great segment to kind of let me tell you all a little bit about RVA757 Connects. You know, we're an organization that's bringing the power of convening, connecting, and collaborating. We have a mission of improving the economic success and quality of life for everybody in the Richmond region, which we call RVA, and Hampton Roads, which is called 757. And we are an association of leaders representing businesses, communities, and higher education. And we're advancing the Hampton Roads to Richmond mega region as the I-64 Innovation Corridor. As you can see, we are pursuing several different priorities. One, which was to help the I-64 Innovation Corridor become a global internet hub, and I'll talk about that more in just a moment. We advocated for the I-64 widening project. That's the 29 miles between New Kent County all the way to the Williamsburg area. That's now fully funded and construction has started, and it should be finished by 2028, which will give us 3 lanes in each direction all the way from Richmond down to Hampton Roads. We also are advocating multi-use trails, as the previous slide showed, and one of them is Trail 757, which formerly had been called the Birthplace of America Trail, or BOAT, as its acronym. This multi-use trail is planned to start at the eastern end of the Virginia Capitol Trail at Jamestown, and there'll be 2 segments that'll both connect to the Virginia Capitol Trail. One will go all the way to the end of the peninsula, and the other one eventually will go across the James River through Southside, and eventually we'll connect them with some other trails to take us all the way to the Virginia Beach coastline. RVA757 Connects helped the Tidewater Trails Alliance, which is the organization pushing for the Trail 757, to come up with a new name, Trail 757, and a logo. And also we created this website. So check out the website, sign up for help if you want to be involved in this particular initiative. You can read about all of our different initiatives on our website at RVA757 Connects. Let me highlight this briefly, our big annual conference, which we call Convergence, which was held last month on October the 1st in Williamsburg. Convergence is our annual day-long interregional gathering of representatives of the Richmond and Hampton Roads regions, and it's sponsored by us as well as the Hampton Roads Chamber and Chamber RVA. We had a record number of registered participants, nearly 200. We had a record number of sponsors. We had some great and engaging content. Those attending gained an in-depth understanding of the I-64 Innovation Corridor's 3 pivotal gateways, which was space, sport, seaport, and digital ports. And they heard directly from top leaders driving those initiatives. At the end of the day, we had a session with top business leaders in the I-64 Innovation Corridor as they shared their perspectives on the importance of RVA and 757 working closer together. We heard from Bob Liu from Dominion Energy, Jennifer Boykin from Newport News Shipbuilding, and Tom McInerney from Genworth Financial. All the PowerPoint slides from Convergence are available on our website under the Convergence tab. And the PowerPoint presentations, if you click on the box underneath the person's name, as you can see here, will provide you with their PowerPoint presentations. We also video record all the sessions, and they're available to watch on our website as well. So please take a chance and look at those. Also, we had some big news that come out of Convergence. PCs for People founder and CEO Casey Sorensen officially announced that PCs for People has selected the Richmond to Hampton Roads mega region as its next expansion market. PCs for People, if you don't know, is the largest and most successful national nonprofit computer refurbisher operating in large U.S. markets with a vision to end the digital divide. What PCs for People does is they collect outdated computers at no cost to the donating businesses or organizations, refurbishes those old computers and installs the latest software, and then provides renewed desktop systems to underserved residents and families for free, up to late model laptops for $150. If you want more information about PCs for People, go to their website. PCs for People expects to be operational probably in the spring of next year here in the mega region. And that dovetails nicely into one of our top priorities, which is to spearhead the efforts to have the Richmond to Hampton mega region designated as a global internet hub. We spent much of 2022 and last year developing a strategic plan to make this happen. Now we have implemented that plan. And the bottom line is the digital assets that we have puts our mega region on our way to becoming a global internet hub. When you view the Richmond and Hampton Roads market together, we have these core components of digital assets in place needed to become a global internet hub. This 3-foot by 2-foot map explains visually how the I-64 Innovation Corridor becomes a global internet hub by combining the digital assets of both the Richmond region and the Hampton Roads region. If you'd like an actual copy of this map brochure, please let me know and we'll get one in the mail for you. On the other side of the map brochure, it lists the 10 strategies. Take a look at them. You'll see what we're doing. If you want more information about what we're doing, then we can send you go to our website, either RVA757 Connects or globalinternethub.com. Both website homepages, and you'll be able to see the map as well as get a better idea of the various digital assets that we have, and help us spread the word about the global internet hub. And then let me turn to today's topic. America is increasingly digitized economy. Digital connectivity plays a critical role when it comes to the nation's competitiveness. Digital connectivity impacts everything from access to education, to healthcare, to modern workplace. However, disparities exist in various communities across the country, largely due to poor infrastructure and a smaller customer base. But reliable internet and high-speed internet changes the lives of people. Today, we want to focus on the hard work being required to bring this critical infrastructure to rural and remote communities that are still waiting to be connected. We are going to delve into Virginia's aggressive plan to end the digital divide in the state. The Virginia Department of Housing and Community Development's Office of Broadband currently manages a portfolio of more than $3 billion in combined state and federal and other funds to improve and put in place broadband infrastructure projects across Virginia. Dr. Tamarah Holmes, who is the director of the Virginia Office of Broadband for the Virginia Department of Housing and Community Development, will explore the agency's work to bridge the digital gaps across Virginia. Dr. Holmes has been in that role since September of 2019. She has spent 20 years in public sector in the field of community and economic development in New York, in New Jersey, in Chesterfield County, and now for the state of Virginia. So as a reminder, before I turn it over to the program to Dr. Holmes, a reminder, if you have any questions to ask, please use the chat function and send them to me. And now I'm going to stop sharing my screen, Dr. Holmes, and I'm going to let you take over the program. And you're on mute.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you all hear me, Greg?
Yes.
All right, and can you all see my slides?
Yes.
All right, thank you all. First, I'd like to thank RVA757 for having me join you this afternoon. Thank you, Greg, for what will be a great moderated conversation. And so I'm gonna go through a set of slides just to lay out the framework of how the Commonwealth of Virginia is working to close the digital divide across the state. All right, and so what I wanted to do was level set today's conversation and really talk about multiple facets that are addressed through closing the digital divide. And so what you see here is we look at three components: access, which means no access to broadband infrastructure. Greg touched on that earlier. We also look at adoption, which speaks to services available and is affordable, but users don't know how to take full advantage of the service. And then also affordability, where you have access to broadband, but service is unaffordable. And so what I'd like to do this afternoon is share an update on where we currently are in our investments across the state and how projects are doing. And then also segue into, as Greg talked about earlier, there's about $3 billion in our portfolio now. That includes about $1.48 billion that will be forthcoming to the state through a federal program called the Broadband Equity Access and Deployment Program, widely known as BEAD. And so I'll talk about that as well. And so what you see on the screen is a map of the state. And so these are the investments that we've made from 2021 all the way through fiscal year 2024. And so if you see the purple shaded areas, those are newly awarded projects that were awarded earlier this year. And then you'll see the projects that were awarded from 2021 to 2023. You'll see that projects have been awarded all the way from the coal fields in Southwest Virginia, all the way over to the Eastern Shore and in locations in between. And so the Virginia Telecommunication Initiative is the state's last mile deployment program where we actually fund projects through a public-private partnership of units of local government, often a county government or a city government or a planning district commission, in partnership with a private sector internet service provider. And so when you see these projects, they're often in partnership between a locality or a PDC as well as a private internet service provider. And so on this map, these investments total slightly over $970 million, with connecting over almost approximately about 400,000 locations. And so again, as you can see, there's locations being built out across the state over the last several years. I wanted to share with you how projects are going. And so the way we measure broadband deployment is through locations, and a location can be a home, a business, or a community anchor. A community anchor institution may be maybe a healthcare clinic in your community. It may be a library in your community. And so what you see here on this particular slide are the investments made over the last 3 fiscal years and how the projects are doing. And so you'll see that the blue bars on each of the bar chart, shows what locations have been constructed based on fiscal year and what's remaining. And so what you'll see there is that if you total all of the completed locations, we're at about 133,000 locations that are currently completed to date since January 2022. Of course, we still have ways to go, as you can see from, if you were to do a total of the bar charts of the orange areas, those are locations that are currently underway, except for fiscal year 24. Those announcements were just made earlier this year, and so those projects are getting under contract as we speak. I also wanted to spotlight several projects that we've made investments. And so I want to give a shout out, as normal, to the city of Chesapeake. They had a partnership with Cox Communications, and they're the first project that closed out under a funding cycle called the American Rescue Plan Act funds. And so those were funds where $449 million in August of 2021 was allocated to our Virginia Telecommunication Initiative program by then Governor Northam and the General Assembly. And so the very first project to completely close out is the City of Chesapeake's project with Cox. I also like to share Stafford County. They had a partnership with Comcast, and so they contracted to build out to 634 passings. And so those are homes, businesses, and anchors. And they actually closed with exceeding their original target by about almost 50 locations, with 682 locations receiving broadband. Also, Floyd County, in partnership with Citizens Telephone Cooperative, finished extending fiber throughout the county. And so they are the first county in Southwest Virginia to reach full fiber coverage. And then lastly, I'd like to share a project spotlight regarding the Thomas Jefferson Planning District Commission, who partnered with Firefly. And so they have a project that has 13 counties in it. 36,225 locations are in that project area in a total of 13 counties. They're on track for the project to be completed on time. And as of September, they completed 14,617 locations currently have access. And so we just wanted to spotlight projects. One, as you can see, there's a diversity of internet providers, there's a diversity of localities, whether we're looking at Chesapeake, which is in Hampton Roads, Stafford County, which is in central to northern Virginia, and Floyd County and Southwest Virginia, and Thomas Jefferson, they're building out central Virginia. I also wanted to share a great tool we have in our toolbox. It's called the VADI dashboard. And so later on in the presentation, I'll share a link to our website. And so if you're in a community, as I displayed the map earlier, that has a current VADI project, you can actually look and see how that project is being built out. And so I wanted to share a project that was being built on the Eastern Shore. It was funded in fiscal year 2022. They contracted to build out 260 miles of fiber. They actually exceeded that component by 314 miles being built out. They contracted to build to 11,091 locations. They've completed that. And so the project is about 97% complete. And as you'll see on the right side, it talks about the funding. Each of our projects not only has a state investment dollars, they also have either local or private match. And so what you see here is $12 million awarded in state grant funding, and then $3.3 million was provided either as local or private sector partner match. In the case of Eastern Shore Virginia Broadband Authority, the Eastern Shore Broadband Authority is both a municipal arm and also serves as an internet service provider. And so we were allowed to fund them through our Virginia Telecommunication Initiative. And so what you see here is how folks track the progress of the projects. This is a public-facing dashboard. And so I'll be able to share that link at the conclusion of the presentation. So if you live in a community with a project, you can see how the project is progressing in your community. I also wanted to share another resource in our toolkit called the Commonwealth Connection Map. This will tell you where broadband is in Virginia and where there are investments. And so I did not pick a specific community when I was going to display the map, but what I wanted to share is there's opportunities for folks to take a speed test at home. There's also an opportunity for folks to look at broadband coverage by different technologies. And there's also ways to look at locations that have access. And so you can actually type your address in this toolkit in the box up top, and you actually can find out who has broadband in your community. You can actually find out if you're in a VADI project area that's been awarded through 2024. And so this is a way for folks to find out whether they're in an area that's served or what percentage of their communities are served, or if they're in an area that's not served, is there a project that's forthcoming through our Virginia Telecommunication Initiative. And so I did want to share this tool as well. And so again, at the conclusion of the presentation, I will share a link to our website so folks can access this map as well. And so you can look at it, as you can see, by address. You can type in your address. You can type in your specific city or county. You can look at by Senate districts, House districts, and school districts. One of the things I like to do, we did a presentation not too long ago for technology staff in school for the school system in partnership with the Department of Education. And so we shared this tool. And what was interesting, we looked at the data by school districts. And so we all know, as Greg talked about earlier in his introduction, that folks access the internet in many different ways. And so what we were able to share with school districts is a lot of times students were sent home with Chromebooks. I live in Chesapeake County. My children, when they were in school, had Chromebooks. And so often children are sent home with Chromebooks. However, they may not have access to the internet. And so this is a tool in the toolkit where we share it with school districts technology staff saying, okay, here's Lunenburg County, for example. This percentage of folks within Lunenburg County locations have access. These locations do not. As you're thinking about how you're distributing Chromebooks, just understand students won't always be able to access hyperlinks maybe in a homework assignment. And so how do we make sure that students are able to do their homework at home or classwork at home? And so this is also a tool that's available to different stakeholders throughout the state to look at coverage across the state and how investments are being made. What I'd like to also share, I talked about the Broadband Equity Access and Deployment Program, and so I'll give you an update on that. And so Governor Youngkin is committed to ensuring that every Virginian has access to affordable, reliable, high-speed internet. And so I talked about our success so far and how we've been building out across the state, but there's still more work to do. And so what I will talk about is the Broadband Equity Access and Deployment Program. And that was funded under the Bipartisan Infrastructure Investment Jobs Act. And so it's a larger funding source that's about 42.45 billion. I never thought in my career of doing grants I would ever start using the word billion. And so it's a larger program where all 56 states and territories are receiving an allocation. The Commonwealth is receiving $1.48 billion. And the priority for this funding is to address infrastructure needs, which is what we've been doing through the VODI program going back to 2017. And so what the slide here talks about the program, and so it's really designed to close the digital divide across the country, focusing on areas that lack broadband. And so the way we define the lack of broadband is you lack 100 over 20. And so depending on where you live at, you may have access to a technology that does not deliver a speed of 100 over 20. And so that's where these investments will go. And so anyone that has a community, I don't want to pick on a certain technology, but if you're familiar with technology, there are technologies that do not meet that definition. And so what we're required to do is make sure that folks are built out to have access to broadband so they'd be able to do things like remote learning from home or work from home, or be able to take advantage of starting an e-commerce business. And so before we get to the BEAD program in Virginia, we are in the process of what we call a letter of intent. And so this gives an opportunity where internet service providers will submit a letter of intent to say they're interested in participating in the BEAD program. That actually closes on November 30th, later this month. And so you all heard me say that this is federal funding. And so with federal funding comes new federal rules. And so VODI, which is our state-funded program, is now going to be also utilizing federal funds to close the digital divide from an infrastructure standpoint. And so what we currently see, whether we're not quite sure if it's going to be, well, there are about 135,000 locations that currently lack broadband of 100 over 20 that do not have a funding source tied to it. And so BEAD will allow us to address infrastructure needs at those locations. There are a handful of cities and counties that don't have a VODI project. VODI has been around since 2017, and we have about 7 or 8 localities that have not either received an award or have not actually applied in partnership with the internet service provider. There's also locations that are eligible for BEAD that are in and around existing VODI project areas. And so the map I showed earlier showed where VODI projects are. If you were to drill down into one of those localities, you'll see there's still locations that lack access. And I'll share a map shortly that'll be blown up. And then there are scattered locations in urban areas. I will tell you, there's only one locality that does not have locations eligible for BEAD, and it is the city of Norton in Wise County, Virginia, which is in Southwest Virginia. That is the only locality that does not appear on the BEAD map, with eligible locations. And so the other piece is line extensions. And so line extension is a program that we have a line extension customer assistance program where we cover the costs. If you live in a community and let's say your home is a mile off the road, you would have to pay additional costs to get the internet from the road to your home. We have a program that actually covers that called the Line Extension Customer Assistance Program. And so also through BEAD, we'll be able to assist families that are unable to get access to their front door because it costs them additional dollars. So this map, yes, it is very exaggerated. Do not stress out. It's blown up so you all can see the prevalence of locations across the state. And as you heard me say earlier, there's not a locality except for the city of Norton that does not have locations that are eligible for BEAD. And so all these dots, red dots, actually total up to about 135,000 locations. And so you'll see there's sporadic locations, even smaller groups of them within certain localities. And so to share where we are with BEAD, and so it is our hope that we will get, and so the way it works is we submit locations, those 135,000 to NTIA, which is the federal funder on the Department of Commerce. And so they actually have to approve our locations. and there's a back and forth with them. And so we're in the process of going through those locations now with the federal funding agency to determine exactly what locations are eligible for BEAD funding. Locations that are eligible for BEAD funding, they can't be, so there's other federal funds out there. There's also our VADI grant. And so we can't fund locations that have VADI investments already there. We also can't fund over existing federal awards that may have come through the FCC or USDA. And so the FCC is the Federal Communications Commission, and USDA provides two different programs called Community Connect and Reconnect. And so we have to make sure that we're not facing funds where there's a location that's already in an agreement to be built out. And so that's part of the back and forth with the federal government, as well as ensuring that we're not going to fund locations that may already have service. We're dependent on the Federal Communications Commission's broadband data map. You saw me post our map earlier, but there is a federal map that the data for the BEAD program came from. And so we're reliant on utilizing that information for NTIA's purposes. And so it's our hope that in spring of 2025, that Governor Youngkin will be announcing awards recommendations for every single location. It is federal funding, and in our case, those boards have to be approved by NTIA. While Governor Youngkin will make recommendations, ultimately the federal agency that oversees the BEAD program will be the approver of our awards that we've made across the state. And then by early 2026, our hope is to have all the projects getting ready to get under contract and building. And so there's another arm of BEAD called non-deployment. And so remember, BEAD has broadband equity, access, and deployment. And so the primary use of the BEAD funds is for deployment. And so that's why I talked about the 135,000 plus or minus locations that will be eligible to be built out through BEAD. But remember those three circles I showed you earlier about holistically addressing the digital divide? It's about access, adoption, and affordability. And so now we're talking about adoption. The Commonwealth investment has focused primarily on infrastructure, which is the access circle. Under BEAD non-deployment, we'll be able to look at adoption. And so we are expected to have funds available to look at broadband adoption and digital literacy programs. And so one of the things we're currently in the process of doing is in conversations with 25 other state agencies to look at innovative programs to invest in non-deployment uses, meaning broadband adoption and affordability. And we also are looking at other initiatives that we're currently developing, but of course, it's federal money, and so we have to get the blessing of the federal agency that oversees the funding called NTIA. And so one of the things we're looking at, and so under BEAD non-deployment funding, there's multiple eligible uses under what is called the Notice of Funding Availability from NTIA, or Notice of Funding Opportunity. And so we're going to receive about $1.48 billion. Remember, the first task is to get all the funding obligated to make sure that every single home, business, and community anchor has access to broadband infrastructure. Then the second piece is to look at non-deployment, which really focuses on adoption. And so you see on this slide examples of non-deployment efforts or non-deployment eligible uses. And so I'll give you a great example. We were awarded some planning funds from NTIA to kind of look at adoption and things around how do we convince folks to sign up for service and use the internet, right? And so I'll give you a great example of something that will qualify under BEAD non-deployment. And so Smith County Library, so Smith County along with Wythe County and Washington counties are in a regional broadband deployment project that's funded in partnership with the Mount Rogers Planning District Commission and Point Broadband down in Southwest Virginia. Smith County Library during COVID actually trained a lot of their library staff to be digital navigators. And what digital navigators are folks that are trained to help people walk through accessing resources or open an email or set up an email account or how to use the internet. And so it's like a hands-on navigation session. And so they trained their librarians staff, some of them during COVID. And so we provided some planning funds to help them expand that. And so through what is considered BEAD planning funds, we funded them to train more library staff to be digital navigators. And I just talked about how Smith, Washington, and Wythe are now getting broadband literally to their front doors of homes, businesses, and anchors. the library actually dispatched people, their staff, physically to homes, to go into homes to help folks learn how to turn on the computer, how to set up an email account, how to log into a telehealth telemedicine visit. And so that's one great example of how funding can be used through BEAD non-deployment. But again, our first task is making sure we get broadband everywhere and make sure we obligate the funding. Also looking at cybersecurity training. I heard Greg say cybersecurity earlier. And so it's really important to talk about making sure not just folks get access to the internet, but they know how to use it and use it in a safe manner as well. And so those are some of the examples of how to utilize BEAD non-deployment funds in Virginia. And so these are eligible uses based on the rules around the program. I also want to talk to you a little bit about digital opportunity initiatives. And so digital opportunity initiatives, there's funding available to every single county and city and tribal government, local, tribal, state, and federally recognized $25,000 grant awards to look at adoption and affordability planning opportunities. And so remember I said we are now going from infrastructure. Some communities are getting built out every single day, and then some communities will be getting it built out through BEAD. And so digital opportunity is really making sure that everyone has an opportunity to not only has access to the internet, but also has an opportunity to be able to fully participate in our economy, in our digital world nowadays. And so we have set aside $25,000 to every single locality and tribal governments in Virginia, again, both state and federally recognized, to help develop a local plan. And so this plan is not about finding out where internet is and where internet is not located. It's really focused on who in your communities are providing digital literacy resources, or are there organizations doing device refurbishment and distribution? Are there organizations just informally providing resources to a community? And so this is a way for communities to really identify what resources they have in a community and what resources they're lacking, so that BEAD non-deployment could potentially be a resource to bring a new service or program to your community, or expand an existing program in your community. And so this is a way for communities to develop plans. And so it's not a plan that we hope will sit on a shelf. It is a plan that will be developed and be able to be implemented through BEAD non-deployment. But there's also another source of funds. And so also under NTIA, there's $6 billion that was awarded through Congress, through NTIA, to also look at what the federal government is called the Digital Equity Act. And so the Digital Equity Act awarded $6 billion to NTIA, and through that funding, each state and territory will also get an allocation, very much like BEAD, not to the level of funding of BEAD. And so what you see here on this slide is Virginia will receive $18.3 million in what will be 3 phases of funding. This is the first phase of funding. Each subsequent phase will be less money than the previous phase. And so our first allocation is $18.3 million. And so we are going to subgrant $14.5 million of that funding to eligible entities to support. And as you see this slide, you'll see an overlap between what are uses for non-deployment and also for digital opportunity. The reason you see that is because Virginia has an opportunity to have, I don't want to say excess funds. Our BEAD allocation is more than enough we need to close the digital divide. We like to say Virginia has been doing broadband deployment before it was cool. And so our early investments have allowed us to get out in front and ensure that Virginians have access to broadband in many localities, especially the ones on the map I shared earlier. So part of our BEAD funding will be allowed to be used for adoption. Not many states have that flexibility. And so what you also see is digital opportunity, where similar things as I talked about, the Smith County Library example, some examples you see here that you'll see a lot of overlap between. You'll see telehealth, helping folks learn how to apply to jobs online. Maybe someone wants to help small businesses how to understand cybersecurity and protect their businesses from cybersecurity attacks. And so we're calling this program the Digital Skills Literacy and Distribution Subgrant Program. Yes, it is a mouthful. We call it DSLD. And so we will be, we're currently waiting for approval. As you see in the red print at the top, we're waiting approval of NTIA. We did submit an application back in May 2024, and we're currently waiting for approval. And so our plan is to open this grant program in January of 2025. And so part of the funding will also go to, of course, we have to have administration of the program. It is a new opportunity for the Commonwealth. And then we're also going to develop what we're calling the Virginia Digital Opportunity Resource Hub. And so this is a hub where organizations can post information on a hub of all the resources within their community. And so that as Virginians look for resources across the state, they can go in and to one place and be able to find resources regardless of where they live at. And then we're also developing a digital opportunity awareness initiative, which really focuses on developing toolkits for communities or nonprofit organizations or faith-based organizations to talk about digital literacy in their communities. Because we can't just build it and assume people will sign up for service. You have to build it and also educate folks on why it's important to adopt broadband so that they can take advantage of resources within their community, also have access to remote learning opportunities, remote work opportunities as well, and also being able to open an e-commerce business. And so I know I presented a lot of information this afternoon, and I'll be able to share my slide deck with Greg so he can share that with you all as well. And then with that, I'll officially close my presentation. On the bottom of the right corner is the link to our website. And so you can actually go there and find out all the resources, both the map, the dashboard, the slides that I shared this afternoon in the presentation. And Greg, thank you all for having me, and I look forward to the questions from the group.
Oh, thank you very much, Dr. Holmes. That was fascinating. And it's not just about putting in broadband in communities across the state. It's also about giving access and training and programs to be able to get, we don't think about the fact that a lot of people have never used a computer before. We all grew up with computers, but there are a lot of people that haven't. So that's important. Let me start off with the questions, Dr. Holmes. And you may not be, I don't know if you can answer this question, but how long will every place in Virginia be connected to a broadband? How long will it take?
So with our current investments, we're on target for those projects to be done by, they have up until December 31st, 2026. That is the rules around the funding that's currently being built out across the state. As I shared on the body spotlight, you have projects that are at different phases. And so projects will end or complete sooner than December 2026. The BEAD funding, as you saw me say earlier, we anticipate that Governor Youngkin would recommend awards to NTIA in spring of 2025. However, we do have to wait to the approval of NTIA of those projects. And so we anticipate, I hate to say like time frames, because every time I think of, I have figured out a time frame of federal government, it gets longer. And so just know that once the projects are awarded and under contract, the providers have up to 4 years to build out. Of course, providers may build at faster paces because remember I said a lot of the BEAD locations are intermingled with existing body projects. And so our goal is to keep the momentum going. We've been building out for the last 2 years. The goal is to keep the momentum going. The goal is also to keep crews here, Greg, because remember, Virginia is ahead of the pack when it comes to doing broadband infrastructure access. With BEAD, we're at the same pace that our neighboring states will be at. And so remember, 56 states, I think it's 56 states and territories also have this same money, and they're at different levels of program implementation. And so we'll be competing against, again, neighboring states for crews and companies to build out in Virginia.
So let
I
me
thought I
ask
was going to
you.
work myself out of a job
Yes.
sooner than later, but I'll be here a while.
So what do you think the long-term impact of all this, these programs, not only on the Virginia economy, but also on the quality of life? I mean, what's the impact? I mean, this could be a huge impact. I don't know if how you
Yeah,
can.
so there's many reports out on showing the impact of a connected society on states. And so I know that one of the things you all heard me talk about, the BEAD non-deployment. And so one of the things we're looking at is precision ag or smart farming. And so we know that agriculture is our top producer within our economy in Virginia. And so one of the things is to help producers or farmers figure out how to incorporate technology into their businesses in Virginia. And so we hope that will produce more output and more outcomes for them and increase, revenues as well, which in result increases revenue for the Commonwealth. But even quality of life. I mean, we know that we see statistics all the time about learning loss during COVID because young people didn't have access to maybe some folks didn't have access to online learning because they didn't have the internet. And so we also see opportunities for increasement in educational attainment and achievement, but also being able to have access also opens up opportunities to learning and also jobs. And so we believe that having access to the internet and increasing adoption of the use of the internet will have significant impacts both economically and on folks' quality of life across the state. And there's lots of data around that.
So we have a question from our audience member who wants to know, in addition to funding literacy programs, does the health literacy qualify for funding? This would be an invaluable resource that can be delivered to all residents.
What was the question? Health literacy, you said?
Here, does health literacy qualify for funding?
Yeah, I mean, if they're delivering it over the internet, it would. And so digital literacy, whether it's digital literacy that's focused on, I know we funded a pilot program with why am I gonna miss Literacy for Life, which is out of College of William and Mary. And so they focused on digital literacy. And what was interesting that I learned, which I thought was a striking statistic that came from that grant opportunity, was folks were made assumptions about what they knew about accessing the internet. For example, how to open an email, how to write an email and send an email. And then when they actually did the curriculum, they actually were not as what's what I'm looking for. They didn't really have the skill set that they thought they had once they went through the course. And so, and I know that I see Donna from Computer Core, and that's a great organization that works on not only device distribution, but also digital navigation and digital literacy. And so a lot of times, one of the things our statewide survey showed was that, and the reason why I think it's tied to this question is we did a statewide survey, about 7,700 responses. And so what came out of that was folks were confident with utilizing the internet, but they were uncomfortable with accessing it for telehealth and telemedicine visits. And so health literacy, I think, will be very important. And I think it really falls under the umbrella of digital literacy, because I know I learned about great tools. I'm not a doctor. I have a doctor in public policy, but I'm not a medical doctor. And so there are actually technology where you can take a stethoscope and put it in your ear or your mouth, and it can go to your doctor, and your doctor do a telehealth visit, and they can actually diagnose you and be able to send a prescription to your pharmacy. And I was like, wow, I had no idea that type of technology exists. And so health literacy definitely, I think, would be an eligible use of the funding, because I think it falls under digital literacy as well.
Well, you have a shout out to Donna James, and she asked a couple questions.
Okay, Donna.
So she wants to know, you mentioned an end of November for a deadline. Please let us know again about that funding. They're interested in the digital literacy funding.
So the digital literacy funding actually will open in January. And so the November 30th deadline is for letters of intent for internet providers that want to participate in BEAD. So that's for infrastructure. And so the VODI program, remember I said VODI is a unit of government partnering with an internet service provider. BEAD is different. BEAD is an internet provider applying directly to our agency to build out communities. And so that's that deadline I gave earlier for letters of intent from providers that are interested in participating in BEAD.
And so her second question was, for the $25,000 per jurisdictions, can a nonprofit apply, or does the applicant need to be a government agency?
It has to be a government agency. Unfortunately, the way the BEAD planning funding worked, which we're using part of our BEAD funding, was that it had to be a unit of local government. And so, Donna, we've had some flexibility around that. With so many things happening and a lot of localities not having capacity, we've worked with some planning district commissions. And so we funded some planning district commissions to come in for multiple counties within their region to do a planning grant. And so while I say units of local localities, we also are now allowing PDCs who have interest maybe from 1 or 2 counties to reach out to us, and if they can convince the other counties to get on board, the planning district commission can come in. I will tell you that I am at the Department of Housing and Community Development. I've been here 10 years, background in community economic development. I will tell you, most community and economic development projects come because the nonprofit in the community found a need that needed to be addressed, and they worked through their county governments to come in for resources for our agency. And I know you well enough to know you are already having those conversations, and if you need some help, please reach out. And again, we are partnering with planning district commissions as well to do those plans. And if you need some help convincing your planning district commission, I know several that are in other parts of the state that can help do that and have that conversation.
So you mentioned, you talk about partnering and with local governments. Talk to us a little bit about the BEAD program. What role do local governments play in the BEAD program success here in Virginia?
So the biggest learning curve between body and bead has been, and just so you all know, and I know we have some government folks on here, the reason body was developed the way it was, Greg, to have a partnership of a unit of local government and a private ISP, is because there were federal programs where providers received money and then they go into a community, often maybe not having a relationship, maybe not even being an incoming provider. And so through the body program, through our stakeholder input sessions, county leaders, city managers, board of supervisors members said, we need a seat at the table. We don't have a dog in the fight when it comes to these other federal programs. And so body is a state program. And so it was important for us to help put the communities in the driving seat. Now with BEAD, we are beholden to the federal rules. And so what we've done is we've put points within our BEAD evaluation criteria for applications, where if a provider gets a letter of support from a unit of local, from the county or a city, they will get 10 points in the evaluation scoring of a BEAD application. And so while localities won't play an active role in BEAD as the applicant like they do at body, they can give a letter of support to an ISP or multiple ISPs who are interested in bidding on BEAD for their communities, so those providers can get additional points. The other opportunities where counties or cities can be a resource, not just for the letter support, but also there's local permits, there's partnerships with utility providers. And so it takes everyone to help build out broadband. I tell you, if it was really easy just to put a shovel in the ground and put the fiber in the ground, we would be done by now. But there are many moving parts that have to move all in different facets and phases to get broadband on a pole or in the ground across the state, or fixed wireless towers up on land. And so I would say, letter support, you can support as many providers as you want that are interested in partnering with you on BEAD. And then also about local permitting and resources that can help to get the broadband out faster.
And Dr. Holmes, is it just, wired, or are you all looking at like satellite technology or even, cell service technology to be able to get people the internet access that they need, and particularly like rural areas?
Sure. So cell is different from broadband, and so I want to make that clear. And
Right.
so it is a tool in the toolbox. And so I'm going to ask you guys to park cell in the parking lot for a minute. And so Virginia is technology neutral. And so we, through the VADI program, remember, a unit of local government picks their internet service provider. And so what we've invested in through VADI have been fiber. We've invested in hybrid coax cable. And we've invested in fixed wireless. A great example is Roanoke County came in for 4 different projects with 4 different providers with 3 different technologies to get to over 90% coverage. And that's currently being built out. They came in with 2 providers that were doing fiber. They came in with Cox Communications, who does hybrid coax cable. And they also came in with a small fixed wireless provider called B2X. And so they saw that they needed a different variety of technologies to get broadband to everyone within their county. And so that was their target. And so we are technology neutral. We have not had a county pick a satellite company as a partner. It is, remember, you heard me say earlier, the counties wanted to be in the driving seat. And so no one has picked a satellite company as their partner. We do know that it will take every single technology from fiber to fixed wireless to potentially satellite to get everyone access to broadband. And so, I mean, I actually looked at where our most remote location is in Virginia. It's actually in Hurley, which is in Buchanan County, Southwest Virginia. I kid you not, I don't even know how the house is up on the mountain. but that house most likely won't get fiber. And so there will be after use of alternative technology. And so the way it's set up through BEAD, and so for Vadi, you can come in with an ISP with any technology, as long as they can deliver the 100/20. With BEAD, we have to, there is a fiber preference based on the federal rules for that program. And so once bids have come in, if we did not get a fiber bid, or if the fiber bid exceeds a certain dollar amount, we have not set that dollar amount, alternative technologies can be used at that point. The reason I'm saying that, because I'm pretty sure there's some internet service providers on this call. If you are an internet service provider and you do not deliver fiber service, please still consider applying for BEAD, because it will take every single technology to ensure that every Virginian, per the goal of Governor Youngkin, has access to affordable, reliable, high-speed internet.
Can you give us a sense of across the country, where does Virginia rank? Are we pretty much much further along because we started this program back in 2017, or are we behind? Can you give us a quick sense of that?
So we are actually ahead. I mean, I knew that anecdotally, right? And so you got to remember, one, we had a broadband program before we actually had a broadband office. And so most states set up their broadband office as a result of the Infrastructure Investment Jobs Act and the BEAD funding. And so most broadband offices are if I had to do it like my kids, are in their infant stage right now. And so I want to say there may have been 2 other actual broadband offices in the entire country before we actually established our office, but our program is one of the earlier investments. A lot of states invested in broadband planning. And so in terms of actual putting money into projects to deploy broadband, we are one of the early states. And in terms of actual achievement and building out and progress to date, I would say we're probably the top state. I've looked at some data comparatively to other states. Most states did not invest in broadband until the American Rescue Plan funding was put out by Congress. And I think that was in March 21, where that law passed and states received an allocation. Our General Assembly, along with the then Governor Northam, as soon as the money got awarded to the state in March, by August, we had $700 million allocated for broadband deployment.
So tell me, first off, are there any questions? I don't see any more questions in the chat function from any of the audience. If you do, please put them in there. But let me ask you, Dr. Holmes, how does a DHCD working to bridge the digital divide in communities across the Commonwealth? What initiatives are in place to ensure that residents in underserved areas have access to affordable high-speed internet?
And so by making the investments we make, I remember the budget language literally for the body program says supplement the cost for the private sector to build out broadband. And so I know I see some county administrators I know on here, and if you were to take one of them off mute, they would say they probably, over the time they've been in office as a county administrator, have talked to internet service providers, but trying to convince them to build out, a lot of them, because, and I didn't put the slide in this presentation, we talk about density. And so often communities that have access to broadband tend to be more dense. And so that means they have more houses and they're more populated. And so areas that have low density tend not to have as much broadband access. And so part of that is because of the return on investment. It's a math equation, right, for a lot of these companies. And so the way Vadi was designed was to provide that subsidy financing for to make it attractive for an internet service provider to build out to those communities. And so part of it is that we're making it more accessible, but we're actually making it affordable as well, because it's broadband going places where it's not now. And so those families don't have to necessarily depend, and I don't, again, want to pick on any particular technology, but those families don't have to find alternative ways to get access to the internet because we're building out. And so we're making it more accessible, but it's also affordable as well. And so that's one of the ways we're doing it. But then also, I know folks probably heard of the Affordable Connectivity Program. That was a federal program that provided a subsidy. We're not quite sure, I know the program did not get reauthorized, and so we'll see what happens at the federal level there. But we do have plenty of internet service providers in Virginia that offer low-cost service plans that are affordable to families. And so through VADI, we're able, and part of the role of the county or city in the VADI program is to share that information as the projects are being built out. And so I would say that we don't have any specific initiatives tied to just affordability. Our initiative is tied to getting access out, but getting broadband to places where it's currently not actually makes it affordable because we're providing that gap financing needed to bring it to those localities and those communities.
Great. I mean, this has been a fascinating conversation. I really, truly do appreciate you taking the time, Dr. Holmes. As the witching hour 1 o'clock approaches, let me just finish up again to thank you, but also let me just remind everyone what's coming up next. And again, if you want to know anything about our initiatives or programs, go to our website. They're all right there. Reminder that the recordings of this particular webinar, as well as any of our webinars in the last 2 years, 2+ years, are available on our website. Just click on the particular item. I'll be sending out a link this afternoon when it becomes available. Also, reminder, our next virtual innovation spotlight will be on Wednesday, December the 4th. And this one will be about a planned manufacturing facility in Chesapeake that's going to be a big part of the global supply chain for offshore wind farms. Now, what's interesting is this offshore wind plant that's going to be built is going to be, they're going to be able to build a massive 660-foot tower, tall tower in Chesapeake. This particular tower will exceed the height of the Western Virginia Beach Town Center and this tower is expected to be the tallest building in Virginia. And it's part of the recently announced $681 million investment that LS Greenlink, which is a subsidiary, a South Korean-based company, they're going to construct a 750,000 square foot manufacturing plant in Chesapeake. So the company's managing director will be on the webinar, will explain why such a tall building is needed to make the cables that are needed for the offshore wind industry. Also on the same program will be Matt Smith from the Hampton Roads Alliance, and he'll talk about how offshore manufacturers like LS Greenlink are really propelling and investing hundreds of millions of dollars here in the mega region. Finally, I want to again thank South State Bank for its sponsorship of this particular webinar, and also thanks to again to Dr. Holmes. We really appreciate you taking the time out, explaining to us about how we're ending the digital divide here in Virginia. And I'm sure you'll provide us with your PowerPoint. I'll put that on our website as well, in case people want to have access to it. But thank you again for doing this and educating us. That's the important thing to help end the digital divide. Thanks everybody for attending today's webinar. Again, a reminder about our next one a month from now on Wednesday, December 4th. And with that, we'll say goodbye. Thank you again. Have a great afternoon, everyone.
Thank you.